All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Inside the Cage. I'm your host, Eddie Mafia. Hope everybody's doing well out there. Thank you for tuning in again to the podcast. Liking the way it's going so far. I think we're making some good content, putting some good stuff out there. So, again, I appreciate the support, everyone who's sharing, liking on Facebook, all things like that. So, huge shout out to all you guys. So today we're talking about UFC 242. It took place this past Saturday, September 7th in Abu Dhabi. Interesting place, actually. It took place in an arena where it was built specifically for the event. So the UFC built it, set it up. It housed like 13,000 people around. So it's pretty cool. So I was gonna do the podcast today with a friend of mine. Unfortunately, he was not able to make it today because we actually made some predictions about 2 weeks ago now, I guess, because in our other assignment, we kind of did a show and we made some predictions about 242. So I wish he was here to talk about it, but it's okay. Shout out to Sean Jacoby. Next time we'll get him on here. But we talked about it a lot and went into some good detail. So we're going to be recapping that today. So, starting off with the co-main event, we had Paul Felder versus Edson Barboza. Edson Barboza, these guys are animals. Paul Felder, love his nickname, by the way, the Irish Dragon. That's insane. I love that. Just the nickname alone, you can just tell the guy's a beast. They're both great fighters. They actually fought about 4 years ago. Barboza bested him in the unanimous decision, even though it was a great fight on both ends. Barboza is known for his flashy kicks, knockouts. He has a crazy highlight reel, and he basically tries to add to that every single fight. He can add something in some manner. But he's dangerous on his feet. Felder's a tough guy, though. He really was hungry after that last fight to come back and beat Barboza the second time around. They fought more than 4 years ago, so there's been a lot of time in between now, their first fight and their second one, and they've actually become sparring partners since then, so they've had the opportunity to feel each other out, work with each other, kind of get more used to each other's fighting styles. But in an interview prior to 242, Felder said, yeah, it's great. We get to spar. We get to learn. I learned a lot. But he also said, I can't look to break your nose and split your eye open and do all this stuff in sparring, but I can in a fight. And sure enough, he did. It was an all-out war. He ended up winning the split decision, Felder, so now they are tied 1-1 in their fights against each other thus far. So in his post-fight interview, this is what Felder had to say.
All you top 5 guys out there, you can't run no more. Come in here and get some. Gaethje, Tony, Connor, I don't care who you are. I'm only in here to be in here with the best. Otherwise, I'm going to retire and become a commentator.
So there you have it from him. Those are his words. And honestly, after the track record he's shown, he's on a win streak right now. He deserves a shot at some of these top guys. He's going to put on a great show. They both did. The crowd loved it. They were both into it. And this means, that they would go for a third fight to determine the ultimate, who the better one between the two of them. Felder did say, though, it had to be a 5-round fight. He wants it to be a main event if they were going to run it back again. He thinks that they deserve it after this fight. And he said that one of the guys was out of the two of them was getting ready to gas out, and it wasn't going to be him. So has that one condition should they fight again, but hopefully that will happen. I would love to see that, run it back for the third time, see who's the better one officially, if you want to say, between the two of them. But great fight for both of them. Shout out to both fighters there. So now moving into the main event, we have the long-awaited return of the lightweight champ Khabib Nurmagomedov, versus Dustin Poirier. We talked about this on our show that we did, Sean and I, and we basically said Khabib all day, and that was basically what it was. I feel like if 9 out of 10 people, if you were to ask how they predicted this fight was going to end up, they would have said Khabib. Sure enough, that's what ended up happening, and it was complete domination. I'd say even more of a domination than Khabib-Conor, because Conor lasted at least 4 rounds. Dustin was submitted in the third, and just the whole time, right from round 1, Khabib pushing the pace, keeping pressure on, backing Dustin up. Dustin had practically no octagon control at all throughout the course of the fight. And then Khabib took to his wrestling, and Dustin attempted to stuff the first takedown attempt in the first round, but failed and continued to fail throughout the duration of the rest of the fight, which ultimately led to, in the third round, a rear naked choke submission for Khabib, and he overpowered him in that sense. They did have a big respect for each other, though, as opposed to the build-up for Conor Khabib. And we know how McGregor is going into fights. Yeah, you want to sell out, but there's also a point where you got to draw a line in terms of being respectful and being disrespectful. And these guys had an extreme amount of class for each other leading up to it, even in the fight, after the fight too. So this is what Khabib had to say following the fight about their respect for one another as fighters and how it differed from last time.
But I want to forget everything. We show really what is this MMA. MMA is number one thing, is respect. MMA is not all about trash talking. You know, this is what we show with Dustin Poirier and his great team.
So, yeah, that's some words from the champ, some kind words from the champ about his opponent following the fight. Huge amount of respect for both those guys, and that's what's really taught. That's the core of it. When you start at a young age, whatever martial art you may be at, you have respect for each other. You're there to learn from each other. You're there to get better. You're not there to hurt anyone. You're there to practice, get experience, and just gain an overall sense of the sport and respect for each other. That's ultimately what it's about. Even like in the dojo, we'd excuse me, they'd give us like brooms and mops, and we'd like clean the mats and stuff, because that's just how it is. Same thing like with wrestling, we'd clean the mats before and after practice, and that's just how it is. You learn that from your coaches, you pass it down to the young kids that come up, and that's how you ultimately gain respect for each other and for the sport as well. So shout out to the champ for touching on those things, and for the younger kids watching, that's a good example for him to set as the lightweight champ. So great fight, for the champ, I should say. Dustin, not so much. It's sad but true. So after that, also, Khabib was asked about a potential third title defense in the future, potentially against Tony Ferguson. He kind of said that he wanted to just take a step back for a little bit, relax. He had a very busy 2 years, so he's kind of taking a few days to he wanted to take a few days, I should say, to process that and comment on that at a later time. So that's basically it for the co-main and main event for UFC 242. And it was a very exciting one, a long-awaited return of Khabib Nurmagomedov. So shout out to them once again. Coming up this weekend, we actually have another event going on, UFC Vancouver. Donald Cowboy Cerrone is facing off against Justin Gaethje. So that's going to be a lightweight bout. It's going to be Saturday, September 14th at 8 p.m. on ESPN+. So definitely check that out. We'll be recapping that next week. So again, thank you everyone for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you next time.